Hello, this is the weekly astrology report from the Chronosight with real stars. Let's begin the forecast for late March, from March 16th to the 31st, 2026. In late March, there aren't any significant major celestial configurations or alignments. But the follow-up structures from the significant events in early March, like the lunar eclipse or Jupiter's station, will continue to exert their influence over the period. So throughout the entire month of March, it seems quite a few important events will be unfolding one after another. The first significant configuration is Venus gradually moving across the sky to meet Alpheratz, which is the alpha star of the Andromeda constellation. Alpheratz is currently at 14 degrees of Aries. As you know, when Venus enters Aries, it falls into detriment. There are about 15 degrees left, and 15 degrees means, 1,000 years? For approximately the next 1,000 years, what this essentially signifies for us is that whenever Venus and Alpheratz meet in conjunction, Venus will continue to be in detriment. On the other hand, because Alpheratz is one of the few fixed stars in Aries that possesses a Venusian nature, Venus, despite being in detriment throughout its entire stay in Aries, is able to find a brief moment of respite, much like an oasis. Only during the specific period of its effective conjunction with Alpheratz, which spans just over 1 degree. So, the Venus-Alpheratz combination has almost no negative connotations. It almost always works in a positive way. There's a very high probability that your past investments will yield returns. Generally, your surroundings will be calm, peaceful, and stable, filled with good people who treat you with respect. Therefore, it's a time for elegant, formal gatherings, rather than simple casual meetups. Something properly formal, with a dress code, where you can treat others with proper etiquette and protocol. That is exactly the kind of meeting to expect. So, it's not just a simple blind date, but more like a formal matchmaking session. It's a suitable time for those kinds of things. However, meeting a fixed star of its own nature does not mean Venus is no longer in detriment in Aries. Because of this, you might fall into a certain delusion. What exactly is it? It's the habitus of those who are better off, maybe a class or two above you. In other words, their spending habits. You might very easily mistake their deep-seated culture of constant consumption and enjoyment, or their massive scale of spending, as if it were something that actually belonged to your own personal life. If you are deluded right now, the only things you will have remaining later on are mountains of unpaid bills and an empty bank account from your credit card payments. Because of this, it's best to stay alert during this period, when it's easy to fall into such illusions. Now, just 1 day later, as Venus moves forward, it forms a challenging square aspect with Jupiter in Cancer. This happens on March 19th and is active from the 15th to the 21st. During this specific period, Jupiter, which is in exaltation in Cancer, is receiving a powerful and predominating square aspect from Venus in detriment. In astrological terms, this signifies that Venus is currently superior to Jupiter. In terms of hierarchy, Venus is in the superior position over Jupiter, but the superior one is in a state of detriment. So, at this time, a very forward-looking and somewhat radical plan, a let's try this approach, might fall through due to opposition from those on the ground. It's the kind of opposition that says, does this make sense? You have no idea what's happening on the ground. Similarly, experienced working-level staff might openly communicate that they can't accept major changes for a variety of different reasons, creating a situation where routines can't be changed despite the clear need to do so. It's not just a straightforward conflict between progressives and conservatives or anything like that at all. Both field and office staff naturally have their reasons for saying that things shouldn't change. But since the whole group could lose its edge and perish if things continue this way, the leadership feels they must make a major change now. they're vehemently making the case that the current moment is certainly not the right time to just be simply evaluating the various conditions at hand. In any case, most groups or communities eventually face total collapse because they cannot find a way to overcome these kinds of intense internal conflicts. It's a pity. However, since Venus is approaching Jupiter, while also forming a favorable aspect with the star Alpheratz, the potential for significant financial gains or investment profits are actually strengthened. So even if the process isn't smooth, it's a period where profits can be generated somehow. Now, and yes, the R mark disappears for Mercury. The R mark for Mercury disappears on March 21st as it stations and turns direct after its retrograde. So it's turning direct. And around that time, it conjoins the North Node, moves away, and then conjoins it again a few days later, maintaining a partile conjunction with the North Node while it's stationing direct. Also, since this degree meets the fixed star Skat, the specific significations of Skat may also be highlighted at this time. So because Mercury is in a very slow state before and after, it lasts for a long time. For a Mercury transit, it's a structure that operates from March 13th to the 29th, well over 2 weeks. Now this is a time when hope is overflowing. Or should I call it an illusion rather than hope? Some very hot news comes in that makes it seem like it could lead to incredible profits and results. So how to use that news and how to change one's position will vary from person to person, but anyway, very hot news is heard. Anyway, during this particular period of time, especially with astrology, and not just astrology, but whether it's Ziwei Do Shu, Liu Ren, or Tai Yi, whatever it may be, it is essentially a specialized technique for reading one's fortune, a so-called divination method, which could involve the use of tarot cards or even the Lenormand system. Anyway, it's a period where the probability of success in investments using such fortune-telling techniques becomes very high. So, among those who actively practice astrology, there are actually some who specialize specifically in this area of financial investment. Now, it's certainly not a guarantee that they will succeed in their endeavors, but anyway, overall, taking this kind of unique approach to the market is interesting. From my personal perspective, applying astrology to things like stock market investing is a relatively minor, a niche form of pattern-based investing, much like a specialized pattern prediction technique. So it's not really that grand or superstitious. It's just based on the very simple premise that patterns that have repeated until now will continue to repeat. It's just that the basis for it lies in the movement patterns of the celestial bodies. Anyway, when doing this, people often get burned badly at first, and that's how it is for most. But this time the probability of success is high. And if you hastily cut your losses now, you might regret it for the next 5 to 10 years. So, at this time, you should be more careful about cutting losses than taking profits. It's a timing that requires a bit of mental endurance, you could say. Now, and one day later, Jupiter, which has just recently entered direct motion, and Mars in Pisces form a trine. It's a structure that operates from March 17th to the 27th. Now, this time isn't exactly pleasant. A rolling stone, if you're not being careful, it is a situation where it could displace the stone that is already there. But the atmosphere itself is very mild. Everyone is laughing and chatting peacefully, but in reality, they are all carefully observing and getting a clear sense of how the current situation is unfolding. It is just like the eerie calm before a storm. So, people who used to be in the minority have now subtly become the majority, and the power dynamic has shifted before anyone even realized it. It's not that it changes so suddenly that people notice it instantly, but rather, as time passes, you realize things are very different from before, and the atmosphere has changed. To use a more detailed analogy, it is essentially like asking why the hard-earned tax dollars paid by the native-born citizens are being handed out so freely to newly arrived immigrants or displaced refugees. So the people who paid the taxes feel very resentful. They're resentful, but anyway. Immigration is legally permitted, and since these people met the requirements, they have to be supported. But emotionally, there's resentment. It's a situation where people are smiling on the outside and not showing any overt aggression, but inside they're filled with indignation that's about to explode. This can manifest around the time of the Mars-Jupiter trine. And right now, it is not explicitly marked right here, but as the specific dodecatemoria degree of the planet Mars moves forward, we have Saturn and the Sun right now. When Saturn and the Sun are in a partial conjunction, specifically when Saturn is in the heart of the Sun, known as Cazimi, the dodecatemoria degree of the planet Mars comes around to approximately 4 degrees of Libra and opposes them both simultaneously. This is the active configuration on March 25th. At this time, someone who has been doing well and seemed like they would continue to do well suddenly starts to falter for an unexpected reason, facing a potential downfall. So people might start to feel a sense of unease, thinking, oh, is even this person going to fall? And on a more practical and everyday level, there could be some truly shocking news related to the military or the defense industry. Usually it is discouraging news where something that once seemed very promising suddenly collapses, which could be a totally unexpected bolt from the blue for those who were once so hopeful. Overall, it's like thinking someone was a really good, sophisticated, and dignified person, only to find out they weren't. This could potentially lead to a significant amount of public disgrace, or even serious defamation in the process. Since this is based on the dodecatemoria, it can hit very quickly and in a way that's extremely challenging to anticipate or predict. The same logic and principles apply equally for the next day. On the next day, Saturn's dodecatemorion degree is around here, and it forms an opposition with Uranus, specifically with the natal environment's Uranus. It forms on March 26th, and for 3 days from the 25th to the 23rd, I mean the 27th, from the 25th to the 27th, this structure will be active. Now, at this time, it's about your turf, which isn't the best expression, but in Japanese, they call it nawabari. So you might feel that what you usually consider your own territory is being encroached upon by others. Whether it's actually being encroached upon objectively doesn't really matter. Because you feel it's being encroached upon, conflicts can arise. To put it in general terms, there will be various complicated issues that arise from overlapping territories. If they don't overlap, people can get along very well. But if they do, even the closest of friends and family can't help but experience some friction. So, for sovereign nations, it's territory. For companies, it's commercial business sectors. And for small businesses, a wide variety of issues from clashing commercial districts can surface at this time. Of course, since it's not a major environment, but a dodecatemorion environment, the scale might be smaller and pass in a much shorter time cycle, but the fundamental reality that a clash or a conflict occurs still remains exactly the same as before. Well, that's it for the Chronosight Weekly Horoscope Forecast for late March 2026. Thank you.